demanded that he become the next emperor, and no, he wanted to go retire and all of that. Well, it didn't work out too well. Well, I got recruited. We had an excellent lady around here, Mrs. Barbara Cooper, Dr. Barbara Cooper, and about 2.5 years ago, she recruited me. She said, Joe, you have to come out of retirement. Do this. We need you because right now we're going too far down the rabbit hole. We've gone too
Okay.
far. You need to bring it back up before it's too late. So I've been recruiting to run for mayor of Memphis, and I have a plan. We will put the city back on the map. It will be the Mecca it is supposed to be.
Yes. I think you would agree that the city is in critical condition, right?
It's pathetic. We have
It
been
is.
overwhelmed in the last few years by people who have been into what can I get? I want to hold this office so I can get financially well off. Well, that's not me. So it's time to turn the thing around. People have no clue, and what they want to do is set up a program or appoint a committee staffed by bureaucrats with no clue. No
Yes.
clue.
Before we go any further, I think there's something going on with your audio. I can barely hear you. Can you hear me
well,
pretty good?
I hear you excellently. Let me try
Okay,
this.
I can barely hear you.
What? I'll put on these. That will probably. It's better.
Okay. Go ahead and say something so I can see.
Mark 1, 5, 4, 8, 9. Mic check, mic check.
I think it's about the same, but we'll go ahead with it.
Let me try this. Is this any better?
Say something.
Testing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
It's about the same. It's about the same, but we'll go ahead with it.
Well, I didn't.
Okay, so let me ask you this. As mayor of Memphis, I'm so excited about you wanting to be mayor of Memphis. I think you are exactly what Memphis needs. I really believe in you. I really feel like you have an impeccable track record of leadership. And this is what I feel like Memphis is needing: good, solid leadership. The city is out of control. It's not the city, Judge Joe Brown. It is a lot of, excuse my terminology, it's a lot of these hood rats. The hood rats.
Well, I can deal with the hood rats. I've been around here for the last half century, and I started off representing what you might call hood rats, but they are, for the most part, boys who have never had man training and haven't grown up to be men. So you don't become a man just because you get a certain age and physical stature. That's a title you have to earn. So I found over a 10-year period when I was sitting on the criminal bench here, that was before I had my 15-year-long show, that the statewide recidivism rate, when they did a study for that 10-year period, started at and remained at 80%. But in my courtroom, it dropped from 80 down to 18%. So what did I do? I implemented a man up program. You see, I found that folk don't work too well when they don't have a purpose or a cause.
Yes.
And you could say, so when you're looking in the mirror in the morning, you go, oh, wow, man, were you a man yesterday? You're going to be one today. Are you preparing to be a better one tomorrow? And that is a purpose. When everything else hits the fan, everything evaporates, or it all looks bad, that is a purpose and a cause. And when you deal with what those things demand, then you do better. Now, that goes back a long way. In Los Angeles, myself, the late Dr. Clifford Stewart, a profound martial artist, his colleague, a Dr. Ron Chappelle, also a profound martial artist, and I, Judge Joe Brown, eventually, we wound up running what's known as Trinity Avenue Elementary School, which was one of the worst locations in the whole Los Angeles school district at the time. Well, we turned things around, the three of us young 20 somethings, and we got a productive thing going on. Now, you probably know two of our former kids. One of them was the late Barry White, and we remembered him as a skinny, likable 12-year-old kid on the playground. And the other one was the last person executed on California's death row, Tookie Williams, who founded the Crips. He kind of went by the wayside, but his mother just wouldn't let us get involved in doing what we were trying to do because she wanted that check, which they started off with. So we couldn't get him out of the swamp, and he just became kind of sort of the baddest alligator in the swamp. The governor of California didn't have the balls to commute his sentence to life after he wrote 6 very outstanding children's books, which essentially conveyed what we were teaching him. And I've seen it go up and down from then and there. And what I have learned is the way to get success with boys is to teach them that they're men, show them how to be men. And when you're a man, you thrive on adversity, whether it's what you face now in the hood or something that used to eat you up long time ago, that in some places in Africa they call Simba. And we have 13-year-old boys who have to go out and kill Simba with a wooden spear without even an iron head on it as a rite of passage into manhood. And I know several of those who actually have done that. So we have to reemphasize manhood, but what we have today is exactly the opposite. Everybody's trying to take it away. Toxic masculinity. And I heard that being preached about 50 some years ago, well, 55 years ago, when it was this phrase that was popular then on the college campuses just to express masculinity being evil, which it isn't. And what people complain of today is not masculinity, it's the absence thereof. Because when you are a masculine individual, you are about duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, and you become men of public peace, dignity, and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary. You take care of your obligations to the people that depend on you. You rise when you don't feel like rising, when you're sick, when you're just out of it, and you go and you do what you have to do to provide. And I always say this: it is the duty of men to provide for and protect womanhood and to promote manhood. And that is what we do, though some seem to find that unpopular.
Okay. Okay. I think you would agree. We've had a lot of increase of the teenagers committing a lot of the carjackings, a lot of the killings. It is really on the rise. Um, from the parental perspective, would you have any plans to hold a lot of the parents more accountable for these teenagers committing a lot of these carjackings? I used to be very comfortable going to the park, sitting in the parking lot eating my Chick-fil-A. I can't do that anymore because I feel like we have these predators all over the city. What would
Well,
you do to bring
one
the
of the
parents
things is, what
into
are you going to do
uh
if you hold the, well, let's see. It's a holistic thing. It's a circle. You have to get to the boys, plan A, plan B, get to the parents, or most likely parent, and you have to work with everybody at the same time because, okay, you hold the parent responsible, and the parent has no clue as to how to be a parent because they weren't parented either. So
right.
that's not going to work. That's like saying, okay, go in there and fix the wiring in that room. Well, if they don't know what an electrician is
They
about,
don't have a
you're
clue
not
about
going
it.
to,
Right.
yeah, you're not going to get a clue. So you have to do things all the way around. Now, 25 some years ago, I finished up counseling sessions that I was doing for single parents. And in order to get in these sessions, you had to have a kid in the Memphis school system, a boy between 13 and 17. Now, it was interesting. The mothers that were involved, you couldn't tell anything to until the children started getting 15ish and started, instead of being here, like here, and looking down on them, and the women who had the children 15 and over who had been through my program, I'd bring them back and say, you better listen to the judge. He's telling you right. The ones that had the 13-year-old boys said, Judge, with due respect, I don't understand why I'm in here. Yeah, I hear you, friend girl. What good's a man for anyway? You okay, Judge, but you know why we need one. So I'd let them do their thing, talk for a little while, and then I'd say, okay, how many of you in here don't want your sons to grow up to be men? Hold your hand up. Of course, we want them to be men. I said, well, how the devil are you going to raise them to be a man if you don't know what a man's good for? And that's
Right.
what you're telling me. Girl, they ain't good for but one thing. I hear you, honey. Man ain't good for nothing. I said, well, see, didn't you just get through saying that? So they had listened, and we had some success stories when it came to the boys, and they became men later. And I hear from some of them, well, this program started 30 years ago, so I hear from some of them now, and 30 plus that, they're in their late 40s. And I hear from some of the parents that were involved, and they're in their 60s now. So, yes, it's been a success, and it's always rewarding for somebody. Can I shake your hand, Judge? So, sure, young man. Yes, sir. Well, you did so and so and so and so. I did. Well, that can range from I put them in a program that I was running where I eyeballed them and was face to face, which is what I think ought to happen more from the top rather than sending some bureaucrats out to deal with it.
Okay.
And sometimes it even gets funny. Judge, you remember me? No. You gave me some time. Did I give you enough? No, no. See, it was that manhood thing. Now I've got grandchildren, and my children all did well. I've been married, and I've got 7 or 8 kids in the neighborhood. I'm trying to teach what you taught me. And that's the 4th and 5th group. I've done that too. Thank you very much. So it's what needs to be done. And whoever the mayor is for this city needs to be some kind of person who can get out there and face to face interact up close and personal, and shouldn't need an armed guard to go get out there and do it, because the people should say, hey, that's our guy. We need to protect him. And if it comes to that, now that seems to be objectionable to other people. I don't have any problems with women doing stuff. It's just right now in Memphis, there is this problem where it is not safe for women and a whole lot of men. We just had an interesting situation where we had a guy who kidnapped a now deceased white lawyer, put him in a trunk, did penitentiary time for that, got out, allegedly raped this black woman. The police department, the DA's office at the time, they didn't see fit to go test the rape kit, and it just became one of 28,000 untested kits in the system. And they missed being able to get this guy, and then he kidnapped another woman, this time a white lady who happened to be well connected with billionaires.
Yes.
And she was out jogging one early morning over by University of Memphis. She got kidnapped, raped, and murdered, allegedly by the same person. And this could have been prevented. But
Yes.
it seems I got in some trouble just 2 days before, because I said, right now, if somebody is going to do what's necessary to get up close and personal with the young folk that need to have that happen, to them and to their communities, something nasty is going to happen. Some
I'm very
young
familiar
women
with that
might feel
incident.
upset
I'm very
about that.
familiar with that incident. That
Yeah,
was Liza
well,
Fletcher, I believe her name was.
yeah, well, it really wasn't the way they portrayed it because they took it out of context. The person that videotaped it is a rabid feminist. She's a member of the Young Democrats, and she had somebody, one of her colleagues, she wanted to run for the mayor's office. I think that woman got less than 1% in the straw poll they had, but I think that's up to the voters. And she asked me, since there's never been a black woman mayor of Memphis, and since black women are the majority of the voters, which they're not, but they have a lot who are voters, why wouldn't I withdraw so that one can become the mayor? Well, that sounded sexist, racist, and misogynist to me. So I just said, well, based on what I've already said about having to get up close and personal, I don't think this is going to be palatable. But I didn't mention who gave me the quote, but it was a 19-year-old young lady at a sort of a town hall meeting. She said, women can't get out and do what the men need to do because if they do, something's bad going to happen to them. And she
Okay.
gave the specifics. So I just said, that's the way it is. Now, later, it may be that some woman is fit to be chosen by the people and become the mayor. I said, but this time things have gone too far. It's not safe. So it is what it is.
Now, Judge O'Brien, when you speak about it's not being safe for women in the city of Memphis, I
Anybody,
want
really.
to be I want to be one woman to say that you are absolutely right. I don't feel safe in this city. And for the first time, 2 days ago, I was at the gas station and I found myself wondering, what am I going to do if somebody pulls up to me and carjacks me, attempts to carjack me with a gun? And I was really nervous about that. I had to make that decision. This is the reality that we are faced with as women in this city. And I had to admit to myself, I'm really nervous about that. You know, I'm really nervous about that.
Right
We are
now,
not safe to walk the streets. We're not safe
okay,
to drive around the city. We're not safe.
you're
So,
not.
so what? As it
Well,
relates
I'll
to
tell you what we can do. All right, let's start with the bottom. We've got a juvenile problem. There is no reason why
absolutely,
Memphis implement a not a program, but in the police department do what they have done in other cities, where you reach an agreement between the juvenile, the parent, and the department. And if the child agrees to the counseling, rehabilitative efforts to give him or her a vocational skill, cooperate with the union so they don't look at it as competition, but they look at it as acquiring apprentices who will become dues paying members later, and with the applicable courts. And you can take, it's been my long experience, and I just mentioned two of them on the front end, the late Barry White and the late Tookie Williams, where you have the potential for one of them going thug as Tookie did, or one of them going respectable as Barry White did, and they're both were very much alike at the time. If you can get to one, they become an upstanding member of the community. If you can't get to another one, then they go on and become dysfunctional thug, and you worry about them when you pull in to get gas at the pump. So we can convert them. And I have found over the years that I have been a playground director, substitute teacher, scoutmaster, a number of other things, that you can take the boys who are marginal when it comes to doing the right thing and turn them into super law and order types if you get to them the right way. They want to do manly stuff, but they don't have a clue as to how because nobody's showing them. So you need certain specific people in place to do that because it's not the programs. The programs are only forms, they're only a structure, and you need people to populate the structure. You can follow the NBA rules and guidelines, and you can set up a basketball team, but if you don't have players, you're not going to do anything. You need the players. So you have to be able to identify the players, and you need essentially a team captain, and that's where I came in. When I was on the bench, I'd go out into the areas and say, hey, didn't I tell you you're supposed to be home at 10 o'clock? You got a curfew? Well, oh, Judge, I'm sorry. So you see me tomorrow at 10 o'clock promptly, and we'll deal with the situation. Who you? This is A and B conversation, young man. I suggest you get out of it. But if you want to hear, you're invited. And then 6 hours later, he's still there with 15, 16 other young males. And I'm teaching them about manhood, and they're hanging on every word. See, if you're going to be the leader in conditions like this, you have to go down there. Next thing, we need to start putting some police precincts in places like these old skating rinks so they can become safe havens for the children rather than kill zones. We need to set up rehabilitation programs in those centers for vocational skills and academic proficiencies. We need to have some work programs during the summer because if a young kid, male or female, has got money in pocket, they're less likely to commit crime. And we spent, on my last estimate, about a billion, committed about $1.25 billion of Memphis tax money to stuff that's going to benefit maybe 110 people. We've got $500 million we've got set up, $750 million to convert that football arena down there in the fairgrounds to a soccer stadium, to deal with the development on the Greyhound bus depot. By the way, we gave 25 acres of the property around that the city owns away to a developer for just $600K, and they're renting it back to the city of Memphis, which is the damn fool, and one of the most foolish things I've heard. $250 million down here to help a major hotel chain improve its downtown hotel. What's that doing for us when we've got potholes and children that need to be fixed?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
now we need to set up communication centers where we have people in the community who have a direct hotline right into dispatch rather than having to go through 911. We need to do a thing about reforming the police department so it's not under civilian review, which is, in my estimation, really ineffective. We need to model it on the U.S. Department of Defense so that you have civilian command and control of the department. The day-to-day administration and operation would remain civil service / police, but the direction, just like you have a civilian secretary of defense, Army, Navy, Air Force, etc., you'd have civilian director or commissioner of police. We already have the directorship. We need civilian subdirectors over homicide, uniform patrol, traffic, sex crimes, checks, bad checks, theft, burglary, whatever you want to call it. And we can get that under control. There are some young men who need to be adroitly recruited to be part of that, because I've also found over the years that a lot of cops that turned out being good cops also had a little iffy background there before they became cops. We can get them. We need to bring that to play. We need to get some job opportunities for the youth so they want to stay here, and for everybody else. How can we do that? Well, in Europe for years, they have been trying to do this. Load barges up in Europe, float them to the Mediterranean, put them on ocean going barge transports, send them across the mid Atlantic where the weather is nicer and the trip's faster, get to the port of New Orleans, drop the rear hatch, float the barges out, get them up to Memphis, where the world's largest barge unloading facility in the world is located on President's Island, and they're 4.6 miles from the exact center of the American transportation nexus. We are the distribution center of North America. It's right here in Memphis. We need to bring all of that up in here, make a concerted effort to get it here rather than trying to shoo it away like we don't want it. Meanwhile, we've got this Mississippi River, the mighty Mississippi. We don't need to build a dam. We have the means to have massive hydroelectric power, and we have these modular hydroelectric generators that are very convenient. You can put two of them in the back of a large pickup, and you can moor them. You can put them on the bottom side of barges, rafts, whatever, and we can get unlimited hydroelectric power, which we can use to power industry. This would be a mecca for industry to come into because of the cheap power. We could sell the surplus from New Orleans to Louisville to Chicago to St. Louis, Kansas City to Mississippi, Georgia, Alabama, Arkansas, you name it. And we could be making money off of it. We've got Ford and Cadillac nearby that have committed themselves to making electric cars. This would be an ideal place to prototype and develop that because of the electric industry. MATA, Memphis Area Transit Authority, would sure like to go to electric buses, and there'd be no charge to well, not gas them up, charge them up. What with the new scheme, your Memphis Light Gas and Water bill would go down, and this big stupid debate about TVA or one of Steve Cohen's buddies getting the contract, it goes out of the window. And instead of us paying out the kazoo for what we don't get, we could get it damn near for free, just the cost of maintenance. Meanwhile, let's talk about Memphis Light Gas and Water. 50 years ago, we used to have snow on the ground regularly from late December all the way in through March. Now, if you get a frosting of snow or rain or hell, a thunderstorm, everything breaks down. No electricity for 4, 5, 8, 9, 14 days for some people. It wasn't safe to drink the water because the pressure in the mains got so low.
Yes, I remember that.
Toxins and pollution infusing into the system. That didn't happen. The structure is decrepit, and that needs to be built back up, and that would be the financial capital to do that. We waste a lot of taxpayers' money on trying to help out a few people who are into real estate acquisition, management, development, construction material supply. They get zoning variances so they don't have to go through the process of compliance. So they don't have to deal with the technicalities everybody else does. And some people get something under the table. And all kinds of scams are going on. One of the biggest right now is to sell property that the city controls to developers for dirt cheap, and then the developers to lease the property back to the city for 4 times more per month than they pay for it in total, which is 3 times as much, twice as much. It's ridiculous and it's obscene. And people are saying, well, it's time that we need the gravy. No, it's time that you deliver good service and substantive government to the people. And it's time for that to happen. Now, when we get this electric car development, what happens is we now have the opportunity to induce Ford, like we haven't already done it, by some of the things that the citizens are unaware of that have been going on under the table to induce them to be up here in Mason, where there are 5,200 residents, and they're getting cut out of the loop because of the greed of certain people. So we need to induce Ford and Cadillac to, instead of sending it to Memphis to put on a train and going to send it up northeast to the Atlantic seaboard, they can do it the short way, put them on slightly modified barges, ship them down to New Orleans, put them on these barge transports that are empty, take them back to Europe. When you get to Europe, what winds up happening is you drop the hatch, you float them out and go up the canals and rivers into Europe, or you can keep another transport load of the barges and go through the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal on the other side, go up into Asia. And meanwhile, once you get to Asia, why leave it there? Instead of shipping from Japan or Korea all the way across the long Pacific Ocean to Los Angeles, to Long Beach Harbor there, you can ship Toyotas and Hondas and Mitsubishis and Lexus and Infiniti vehicles. You can ship them through the Indian Ocean, through the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean, over to New Orleans and up to Memphis to get in the system and save about 8,000 or 9,000 miles on the long way going across the Pacific, then putting them on a train that get to Memphis and into the distribution net. See, we have all of these things available. I've had inquiries over the years about, can you help us get into Memphis? Aren't you from Memphis? Yes. Well, let's do that so we can make this place a huge, prosperous place to live, rather than where am I going to get the money to go visit my grandchildren or my children who moved out of here as quickly as they could so they could get opportunity. We have a change going on here. We have a huge Hispanic community that lives in the city now that everybody acts like does not exist. So we need to bring black, white, brown, red, yellow together so we can all work on this instead of being turned against each other by some manipulative scoundrels who want the opportunity to make money. The middle class, white, black, brown, red, yellow, has been neglected. We can't get anything. And what we need is for the middle class to be brought back together and energized so we can push the city to where it is supposed to be, bring more people into the middle class. And we need to also fund and subsidize small businessmen and women who can innovate the economy. We need to do things like our music industry here is not all Elvis Presley, damn it. He's been dead a long time. We need to do something about reviving the local talent we have. We've got respectable
and we have a lot of talent.
That ought to have subsidies.
We have a lot of talent.
Oh, we've got all kinds of things here that we ought to be spending our money on, but we don't. And in those 28,000 untested rape kits, that is a disgrace and a shame. Memphis, for some reason, decided to pick up the tab for Bartlett, Collierville, Germantown, Arlington, and Millington. And those are county locations, not city, but we're picking up the tab. Or are we? We came up with a program of $7.2 million about 9 years ago with a New York agency. We gave them a 5-year extension on a 5-year plan. They still haven't finished it. Meanwhile, some people are splitting the tab when it comes in. TBI says they can come in and do it real quickly and damn near for free. So why are you not using that? Well, I'll give you an example. About 34 years ago, when they were just building that Mud Island development, the housing development over there on Mud Island, If you went over what is now the A.W. Willis Bridge, there was a stop sign at the corner there, right angle stop sign in the corner. We sold that on my information to a developer for $13,600. Less than 2 months later, he sold it back to the city for $6.8 million. Now, what was going on there? Well, taxpayers' money changed hands and some other folks split it under the table. See, that's how Memphis works. And then they put a yield sign there and it became a curve. Now they've made it a roundabout. That pyramid, $85 million of taxpayers' money got wasted. We gave it away to Bass Pro for $1 up front a year and a promise to hire some employees. Well, now they've got their name on the side of the pyramid. You can see it for miles. All of this hunting traffic going to the waterfowl areas in Arkansas, the rabbit hunting, deer hunting areas in Arkansas, and this tremendous traffic back and forth. We wound up putting in the elevators that run up opposite corners to the restaurant we finally put in at taxpayers' expense. And what do we get out of it? Nothing. Meanwhile, why was it put there in the first place? The original plan for the same $85 million was supposed to be a magnificent, huge structure, the same size or dimension wise as the ancient Cheops pyramid in ancient Egypt in Memphis by the Nile instead of the Mississippi. It was supposed to be up there where the River Mark is now, which used to be the Rivermont, the flagship hotel for Holiday Inn. Well, the usual did its thing in Memphis, so they put it where this little half-size edition is for the same amount of money, 7 feet below the Mississippi River level. It's just what we did. That Mud Island amusement park, that was built at tax expense, but there was no long-term usage foreseen for it. Main Street America used to be Main Street. It was thriving. Then some people got the idea we can do a development at tax dollars and forget where it isn't going to go. And it was nothing for a quarter of a century except a trap. And finally, they got back around to doing something rational with it. So we have these projects where people go to find areas that they can acquire for cheap, and then they lease the land back to the city, build something on it, get paid to build it, and give a little percentage to the city out of their net, which never exists because accountants zero it out. You can go down there to the end of Beale Street on Riverside Drive, and you have Beale Street Landing. It looks like a hill, grassy hill with a giant catfish jungle gym next to it. We spent $35 million worth of tax money so that they could open that thing up in 2014. It was supposed to be a gift shop, bar, and grill. Well, the guy that did the agreement was supposed to lease the whole thing for $1 up front every year and 4 to 6% of his net, which was going to be zeroed out by his accountants. But he bailed on us, so we have a $35 million white elephant we can't do anything with because the city can't run a bar. So we just have that. There was $28 million that was given away to a firm that was supposed to develop a new airline. They weren't even incorporated, but they kept the building and sold it for quite a bit of profit after it had been, well, all of it was profit since we gave it to them. They want to spend several tens of millions downtown to put in a new movie theater. And I thought private enterprise was supposed to finance their own way, but it doesn't work that way for some people. So why should we get stuck paying for it and get nothing out of it? This deal about 4 to 6% of the net going to the city is crap because the accountants always zero it out, so there is no net. Why do some people get zoning variances so they can propose these projects. And why do we continually spend money on these projects when the city gets nothing? Well, let's cut to the chase. There needs to be a mandatory calculus wherein the amount of money that the city spends is rationalized by showing that the citizens get a certain amount of return from it. Also, another practice has got to stop where people buy up properties that are out there in the land bank and other places from the city and then lease it back to the city. What is that? We have a problem down on Beale Street. I mean, Beale Street started out as a red light district that was essentially restricted to black folk. Now we have no play on the thing. Why is it that the lease agreements are as they are on Beale Street instead of being rationalized and brought forward so we can get clubs in there? We've got black clubs all over the city that are trying to come back into play for grown folk where it's safe, where you don't get all the sag bag clowning. So what's going on that we don't do something about that? You see, these kind of things need to be developed, but we're not even thinking about them because somebody's talking about we need to improve the skyline of downtown Memphis, and nobody lives down there but a few people in these converted structures that are now condos that are too ritzy for anybody to walk in the lobby of. We need to have this developed and that developed. And you say, well, how many people are you going to employ? And they talk about, well, we'll have 27 people working as a maid. Well, I can think of a lot better use for the money that is involved in 27 people for being a maid. Maybe they can get more money in another way and we can hire 127 of them and maybe their children won't be in danger of having to get a new dark suit to be buried in or a pretty dress to be buried in. See, we need to start thinking about what we are doing, and it's time we took charge of our situations. And we can do that. And the other thing I'd like to do is I don't think it's right for the biggest unit of the county school system to have just 2 votes on the board. And what the devil is going on with that? Why did we surrender our educational charter to the Board of Education for the county? Now the county runs it, but I look at some things right now. They've got a legal department. They've got an attorney for the Board of Education, County Board of Education. Yet they spend $350, $500 to $1,500 an hour to a certain private law firm to handle routine business that's supposed to be handled for by the legal department that's already paid for. Why is it that we turned over the selection of teachers to Teach America, a private business locally is headed by someone that's in his mid-30s who doesn't even have an educational background?
Okay.
Why is it that we turned it over to a private entity to say we don't need teachers with a 4-year college degree? We can get those with just a 2-year associate degree, which we will grant. We'll train them. We'll hire them. We can fire them. We can assign them and start them at $28,000 to $32,000 a year, which is below the poverty line. And no retirement plans. Who are we going to get, for goodness sakes? See, all of these things that are done out there can be changed. They need to be changed. And it's time for the little select bunch that's on the inside sipping Chablis and nibbling cheese and crackers, sitting on a nicely upholstered couch in the Peabody lobby, speculating on Jamal, Carl, what do you think they're doing down there in the hood these days? I don't know, Alan. Maybe they are so on and so forth. And see, that's not what we need. but that's what we've been getting. So Memphis deserves better. It's time for the citizens to take control of the city, to run the city, and to move the city where the city ought to go. And they need a mayor that they can work through to make that happen. And I've been
Okay.
recruited,
Okay, let me ask you
and
this.
I offer myself for that purpose.
Okay, let me ask you this, Judge Jerome. There's been some talk that, as far as police, um, we have a wonderful police force, and I really
And the
appreciate a lot of
morale
the
is
work that
shot dead.
they've been doing. But I've been hearing some talk that there is a shortage of police. What
There it
would you
is.
do as mayor to increase the
Well,
number
let's
of
put it this way.
police?
If your job is unappreciated, if you're hated because you have the job, if the pay isn't what it ought to be, if your retirement benefits and pension have been chopped all to the devil, it might be difficult. But you see, one of the reasons that has happened with the pay and retirement and pension is because the money is being spent elsewhere on the few, essentially quasi under the table. That needs to stop. We need
Okay.
to be effective with their recruitment. I also want to do something about boosting their morale, which is one of the reasons I said we need a complete revision of how the police department is structured and operated. Let's model it on the Pentagon, boost the morale back up so it becomes a place where people can be proud of working. Now,
Uh,
I noticed under Doc Harrington, let's say in the late 1990s, early part of this century, I saw something different happening. I was driving down the street and I saw a senior woman and I recognized her from some community work I'd been doing. So I pulled in to stop. And she was with a friend girl and they had a tray with coffee and donuts and some plastic cups. I said, "What's going on?" She said, "Well, we're waiting on our local officers. They've been so nice here. We thought we just come out every morning and treat them to coffee and donuts." I said,
okay.
"Wow, that is a hell of a change." And what happened? Well, Doc, who I had done legal work for before he
Keep
became mayor,
talking, Judge O'Brien. I got to get my phone charger. Keep talking.
okay, and he had done stuff before I became, well, we'd done stuff before he became mayor and I'd become judge. And I know for the first few years when he was in office with the director of police, he got rid of him basically anytime something went wrong they didn't immediately take care of. They would read on the nightly news or hear on the nightly news about being fired. So it was no excuses. Take care of the business, get everything squared away, and get it done like it's supposed to be done. Now, that's going to be difficult because right now, for the first time in 41 years, we have a civil service chief of police rather than a director of police. And that's another one of Strickland's incompetent moves. And that needs to be dealt with. And it'll give me a task, but I figured out a way how to once again assert civilian control over the police. So it will be done. And we need that badly. Now, since you're not here to ask me another question, I guess I'll just pull another one out of the air. Other point, and some may have an initially bad reaction to this one, but I think it's a great idea. The Second Amendment says a well regulated militia being necessary to the common defense. Well, we've got some savagery going on down in the hood, down in the wrong parts of town, as some people might term them, but which could become a right part of town. So we need to recruit retired first responders, veterans, and good citizens who don't mind going through the monthly training or drill, if you want to call it that, and become part of urban civilian militias.
Okay.
And they can go out and supplement the police department and help take control of the neighborhoods. It's kind of a counterpart to what Detroit was successfully running about dads in school. I'd call it fatherhood back in the hood, and it would go, hey, come here. What are you doing out at this time of night? Go home. Go home. And he's got 5 other people on patrol with him if they're carbines and they live in the area. That's singularly appropriate way for people to take charge of where they live and restore public peace, dignity, and order. So I want to set up an urban militia
Okay.
composed of good citizens, officered by former police, and we will supplement our police department, and that might be a very efficient use of some of the city's funds. And that would give everybody an opportunity to be part of the solution, or give a lot of people an opportunity to become part of the solution. And I'm not talking about any Proud Boy, bunch of cranks or anything like that. I'm talking about good citizens. So that's a way of taking control. You see, there are innovative methods that people could bring to bear. When I was on the bench, I looked at the new criminal law that Tennessee adopted in 1988. Said, this thing right here on sentencing that said judges are to be encouraged to use innovative, non-incarcerative alternatives for sentencing. I said, well, let's go for it.
Okay.
So some of the things I came up with: reverse theft. In other words, if you were the burglar, you got caught, you got sentenced, and you wanted probation and you were otherwise qualified for it, you had to agree to some of Judge Joe's provisions, which were, amongst other things, that the victims of your burglaries would, while armed with a court order and accompanied by sheriff's deputies, conduct surprise visits / raids on where you live and seize property from your place up to the amount of what got taken from them. If somebody claimed it was their property, they had to make a claim, and we'd run it through NCIC, and heaven help anybody that had stolen property. People got large screen TVs, cars, appliances, all kinds of interesting things. And surprisingly, toward the end, I couldn't do it anymore because there was nobody to do it to. It basically was drying up. And then, give you this, you have some interesting community service you have to do. You're going to have to
Yes.
teach these kids about what it is they're getting into. So I want you to come to the lecture sessions. Meanwhile, the judge is locking the doors, no tide, no bat cape on. And we had candid discussions about what was going on, and I had some interesting people come talk to them. Well, the mayor can do the same thing on a much bigger scale. So let's get inside the heads of the youth and make them want to be men and women who are dependable, who are reliable, who develop a work ethic, who do
Yes.
things that they ought to do instead of being so chunked out. See, this is
Yes.
the thing most people don't realize. The biggest chump in the system is the crook. Here's why. See, America, unlike every other industrialized country, does not have a program, a plan, or any structured thing where the ordinary worker who has been made obsolete by industrial technology and computerization can be made productive again. He is treated as a commodity. Labor is a commodity like wheat, corn, or cotton. What do you do when you get a commodity glut? Three things. You cut back production, subsidize the would-be producer, and store the surplus. We put our surplus in a jail cell instead of a grain silo. The subsidy is the assistance check, and the cutting back of production is the one that slips by the wayside. It is putting in the child's head as he's growing up this weirdness where he thinks it's cool to bang out, drug out, drop out, get knocked up too early, too often, develop inappropriate attitudes, outlooks, is not prepared vocationally, is not prepared academically to do anything with his or her future, who has the wrong lifestyle, wrong ideation, the wrong way of dressing, the wrong way of carrying him or herself, who creates chaos where he or she lives so that that area cannot behave in a constructive, cohesive, political fashion so it can engage in community self-help. And they are unemployable with that kind of mindset and lack of preparation.
Absolutely.
First
Absolutely.
felony, like, don't even bother. So we now get rid of that surplus. Now, there is a real dark, dank reason as to why they like to do it the way they do now, because they don't want any Timothy McVeigh types who get real pissed about them getting cut out of the loop and going and buying 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and blowing up a courthouse in Oklahoma City and taking down 240 some people. Now, ammonium nitrate is America's most popular and common fertilizer. You can get it in any lawn and garden store. Well, if you know what you're doing, ammonium nitrate is a very effective explosive. The military uses it in their 155 millimeter howitzer shells. It can be sensitized. How to do so is online. So you get rid of the guns, you still have ammonium nitrate. You can go buy it at Lowe's, Target, Walmart, and you can really take somebody down. You've got fentanyl, which is a horrendous drug, and
Yes.
people in Tennessee are being told by some sheriff's departments to beware. If you find a bill by the gas pump, that gas station again,
Yes.
don't just pick it up. Be very careful, because fentanyl will absorb through the skin and you feel all right for a while and then you die. So we have to worry about things like that.
Yes.
But we need people who at least can focus on what needs to be done to correct those problems, saying that I'm going to get in and I want to improve the skyline, or I'm in and I took down some statues. Oh, let's talk about that. We had Nathan Bedford Forrest up and we had Jeff Davis up. Okay, nice plan to take them down, but what happened to the properties? Why is it that the properties got sold to a private entity for no bid? You know that thing where Nathan was down there on Union Avenue, right in the middle of the hospital complex?
Yeah.
Would you believe that cost us $2,500? Where Jeff Davis was, right next to the Metal Museum on the Bluff, would you believe that prime property cost for just $2,500?
Wow.
So be it. And what's happening? They can't sell it. I tricked somebody into admitting that. He didn't know what was going on, but you can't sell it, but you can rent it back to the city. So who's paying for the maintenance, the upkeep, security, the liability insurance? Oh, wow, we whoopee. Guess who? Us. Guess who gets to sublease this stuff again? Guess who stored Nathan and Jeff for a very high cost for going on 3 years until the Johnny Reb concern took them over. See, those are the ways that people make money. And by the way, the corporate entity, a nonprofit set up to run that, may be in line to operate the fairgrounds, where they're going to spend another $1 billion of tax money to develop into a very exclusive area. What about that Mid-South Coliseum they used to use for concerts that will be turned over to be operated? What is it that we get out of it? And if you want to go see the other thing too, go down Airways. It turns into East Parkway just as you get to Sam Cooper Boulevard. You see all of those new apartments going up. How many of them had to go through normal zoning compliance hoops and hurdles? And how many of them got a variance? You see, we have a city plan. It needs to be adhered to instead of so many exceptions being quietly granted with no benefit to the people.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of things you have to do.
Judge Joe Brown, I'm using my phone and I'm having some problems with my charger. So we're gonna have to wrap this up. I really appreciate you.
Well, you just got tired of me. Just tell me I've been talking long.
No. I'm enjoying you. So I'm gonna invite you for another part 2, and we can have a longer discussion. I'm enjoying you. But one last thing I want to ask you.
2 things I want to put very quickly. I'm into service and sauce. Let's start with the sauce. For some of the best barbecue sauce the best you've ever bought.
Okay.
Judge Joe Brown Barbecue. JJBBQ.com. JJBBQ.com. Go there, order yourself some. It's on the shelves in California. And speaking of the black woman thing, the sister who does the chicken links, hot and mild, raw and smoked, she operates the only black-owned USDA certified packing plant in California. So
okay, I'm gonna order me some today.
Yeah, and also look up Poppy's.
I tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna order me some today, and I'm gonna do a live cooking with your sauce.
Okay, now next
one
thing,
last thing I want to ask you. I'm really excited about you becoming mayor.
Service.
I'm really excited about you running for mayor, and I'm rooting for you to win. The last debate that you all had, there were some people
that
who
wasn't
felt
the debate. That was not a debate.
I want you to clarify
that. We got told over and over by the moderator who put that tape out, gentlemen, this is not a debate. This is not a debate. I said, well, it seems like it. Well, it's not a debate, Judge. It's not a debate.
Okay.
Okay, now they want to characterize it as a debate. But anyway, go ahead.
So some people left with the impression that you felt like you was talking down about women.
No,
women and
let me tell you the lie
they put out.
They're lying through they're lying through their filthy teeth. Let me tell you what happened. It was at the Pocket, a club downtown. It's 3 floors on Union. Doesn't have a sign out front. There were I looked at the sign-in sheet. 23 young Democrats signed in. They were sitting up front. As it started to go on, I crashed it. I wasn't invited. One, all right? Next thing, about 115 more people came down there. So there were between 130 and 140 people. Out of that crowd, about 110 of them were doing power fist, high-fiving, and saying, right on, Judge, that's what it is. And I had a whole slew of women came up volunteering to work in the campaign. The only people in the place that were upset about that was that little group of young Democrats, maybe 20, 24, 25 of them out of the 130, 150 people in there. Everybody else was coming up, slapping me on the back, talking about way to go. Women were saying, thank God somebody wants to protect us. And see,
Yes.
it wasn't even original to me. I was quoting a 19-year-old female college student.
Okay.
So that was a lie. They tried to play it, and actually they got played. They were trying to ignore me. He didn't
Well,
exist.
Judge O'Brien, that's what a lot of people do when they try to discredit you. They, misconstrue your words, and they try to prevent you from getting, a lot of support. But you have my support, and I'm
No,
looking
thank you.
forward to you being the next mayor of
Now, let me,
Memphis.
on that, my motto has been for decades, protecting womanhood and promoting manhood. Next thing,
That's great.
on the surface, here is the site. Judge Joe Brown, JJB 2023.com. JJB 2023.com.
Okay.
Go there. You can contribute to the cause. You can volunteer. And we just set it up a week ago. So we're working out the bugs, but you'll be able to print out your own campaign literature and other stuff by the time we get through. And we have a town hall meeting coming up the 12th. And let's see.
Is that the December 12th or when?
That's
January?
December 12th. Let me check here. Well, not the 12th,
Okay.
excuse me. Yeah, that's the 14th, tomorrow. It is CASK, Commission Against Senseless Killing. It will be at
Okay.
the Raleigh Library, 3452 Austin P. Highway. Now, your GPS may take you to a storage facility, but it is about a mile and a half further north on Austin P than that storage facility next to the police precinct. So we will be having a town hall meeting there tomorrow.
What is the time?
The time will be 5 p.m. to 7.
Okay, great. I'm looking forward to joining that. And I would like to invite you for another discussion at another time, maybe the first of the year. And I'm looking forward to getting your barbecue sauce, and I'm looking forward to supporting you as the next mayor of Memphis.
Okay. All right. Now, I never lied to the people, even if what I tell the people may not be something they like when they hear it. But
Okay.
they will say, he didn't lie. He told us the truth. Now, I don't need any more money. I'm well set. And by the way, there's a lie they're putting out that I got fired from that last TV show. I didn't. At the time I quit, I was the number 2 syndicated show in America. It was Judge Judy, Judge Joe Brown, Wheel of Fortune, followed by Oprah Winfrey.
Okay.
Oprah Winfrey, Judge Judy, and Dr. Phil were in the same CBS syndicated unit, and I was whipping Oprah and Phil every week in the ratings. So CBS put out for their stockholders that I was the number 1 income producing show that they had for 14 consecutive quarters.
Okay.
So they can say what they want. I just said, I've done this 15 years. I'm over retirement. It's time to get out of here. But Ms. Barbara Cooper talked me back. Dr. Barbara Cooper talked me back into the mix. So here I am. Feels good.
Well, I certainly believe that you have what it takes to move the city where it needs to be. And I look forward to supporting you in your campaign. And I really, really appreciate you wanting to show interest in being the next mayor.
And another thing, too, if you want to come down to our unofficial headquarters, it's at the Rocking Chair on, well, I guess it's Presley. They call it. I don't like to use that term, but it's on Presley, the Rocking Chair. And if you don't recognize that, it's the old Hawaiian Isles. It's been completely renovated. It's a pretty good place. Check it out. We've got some new adult clubs that are setting up in Memphis that are pretty good places to be entertained. And
Okay.
we ought to start patronizing them, and the city ought to be subsidizing them. So, anyway,
Okay.
there it is.
Okay.
I gotta go. This has been Judge Joe. Catch me when you can, since I'm the one that ran. All right.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I'm
And
out
you
of
have
here.
a great
Thank you.
day. Thank you.
Oh, you jumped over here. Okay.